Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Conservative Fox and Friends host Brian Kilmeade is freaking out.
Numbers show the Hispanic vote went heavily for the Democrat. That is a warning sign for next year.
Kilmeade is reacting to this. Democrats flip Miami mayor's office, winning control for the first time in nearly 30 years. Eileen Higgins got a landslide victory over Emilio Gonzalez, who was endorsed by Donald Trump. Higgins focused heavily on inflation and affordability.
The Democrat, first female mayor to ever win in Miami. Usually it's a Republican. This is the first time in 30 years that a Democrat has won.
Crushed.
But they really
Crushed, as in a Democratic win by 19 points.
focused on affordability and making local government work better and faster.
The implications nationwide are huge.
If the administration does not win the Hispanic vote, the Texas redistricting will not work because it's all based on the president continuing to get 47 or 46% of the Hispanic vote. If they are misreading the president's aggressive policies on illegal immigration, they love them at the border. They don't necessarily love the aggressive tactics going to Home Depot and or landscape trucks dragging people off. The perception is that they're being grabbed because they're Hispanics.
Hispanic voters in Miami said they were also put off by the Trump economy. That has been a constant theme in special elections for the last several months. Democrats have a string of victories and are exceeding expectations even in races they lose in heavily Republican districts. Donald Trump keeps insisting that any economic problems are because of his predecessor, Joe Biden. But another Fox host, liberal Jessica Tarlov, noted the Trump defense is not working.
The argument that the guy who's been out for a year, that it's all his fault when you've implemented a totally new economic agenda and that it's a failure in basically every corner of it is not really resonating with people. When Joe Biden's inflation number was over 9%, the entire world's inflation number was up. Donald Trump doesn't have the same issues that Joe Biden did. He doesn't have a supply chain problem. He doesn't have a global health pandemic that was killing millions of people all over the world. He's just setting our economy on fire, and not in the good way, in like the dumpster fire way.
Trump is also ignoring reality. In a recent interview with Politico, there was this.
But I do want to talk about the economy, sir, here at home. And I wonder what grade you would give your economy. A plus.
Yeah, A plus, 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 plus.
The A plus grade, obviously that's ridiculous. But there are some key indicators that Donald Trump and his administration knows that this is going really badly. First, Susie Wiles having to go out there and say he's going to get back on the campaign trail. That'll really animate the right. Well, guess what? It'll animate the left as well. We aren't getting the jobs numbers anymore, the GDP numbers, or the inflation numbers. And we know that Donald Trump, if a number is even remotely good or he can lie about it, he tells you what it is. Layoffs on track for Great Recession levels. ABC says 70% are spending more on their groceries, 60% more on utilities. Reuters, manufacturing has been contracting for 9 months straight. And this farmer bailout, $12 billion of his tariff pot, which he didn't need to put the tariffs in the first place. And the farmers are speaking out about this. This is Donald Trump's problem. He's the one who caused this. The head of the National Black Farmers Association, agriculture in this country has been in complete turbulence and turmoil since the president got elected. This is a man-made crisis.
On Fox News, some of the conservatives are still spewing their Donald Trump talking points.
Record stock market. Right now, the stubborn factor is rates. So once he gets these rates to come down, it unlocks the housing market, and that unlocks the American dream.
But staying on Fox News, other conservatives are also beginning to crack. And they have become increasingly aggressive in questioning the Trump economic team. Laura Ingraham just noted the administration's own Bureau of Labor Statistics is reporting the highest number of job layoffs in 3 years.
The BLS numbers, the layoffs reached 1.9 million. That's the highest since 2023. So what is that? Is that AI? Is that migrants leaving the country? Is that, automation? And is next year's boom in energy facilities and AI build outs, and is that going to be able to really, blunt that effect?
Right. Well, we still have to get like the government data that we lost because of the shutdown. And one of the things we're seeing is that payroll surveys, where they call up firms and say, hey, do you have how many people do you have working with you? That they're showing much lower growth than household surveys, where we ask people, do you have a job?
Translation? Don't believe the data, says Hassett. Well, that is kind of like Donald Trump's own claims and fibs. They are delusional.
After just 10 months, our border is secure, our spirit is restored, inflation is stopped, wages are up, prices are down, our nation is strong, America is respected again, and the United States is back.
Just a fact check on that last bit. The inflation rate is higher than it was a year ago and has been rising since President Trump's tariffs took effect in April. Meanwhile, beef prices are at an all-time high, and his tariffs are to blame for increased costs on common grocery items like coffee and orange juice. Also continuing problems, Willie, as more and more people appear to be having trouble finding jobs, definitely having trouble buying homes, and affordability is a big issue.
Indeed, and a few news organizations interviewed Trump supporters after the rally.
Listen to those exit interviews with people at the rally. They say, I like Donald Trump. I like a lot of what he stands for, but he is wrong that things are going well in this country in terms of our pocketbooks.
Yeah, he can lie about a lot of stuff and his base will take it. It's very hard for him to lie about how expensive everything is because people feel it. And, you know, I don't know. This speech, he's not well. He's not well. I mean, it is very, if you just took his speech in isolation and it wasn't Donald Trump and it was out there and he gave it to a group of people at a Rotary Club or something, people in the audience would be going, what? It's very bizarre to me that he cannot have any discipline when he does this.
During Trump's speech, the president verbally meandered into riffs about migrants, Democrats, and stolen elections. On the economy, which was supposed to be the focus of the speech, Trump did acknowledge that some Americans may need to sacrifice as his policy transitions and tariffs take hold. Trump said that some Americans may need to limit the number of dolls and pencils they buy their children.
You can give up certain products. You can give up pencils. Because under the China policy, you know, every child can get 37 pencils. They only need one or two. You know, they don't need that many. But you always need steel. You don't need 37 dolls for your daughter. 2 or 3 is nice, but you don't need 37 dolls.
Former Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill says Trump's talk about financial sacrifice is even more insulting when you consider Trump's own approach.
He of gilded Oval Offices and ballrooms and gold dripping from everywhere, his excesses on a personal level, how dare him tell people how many dolls they can buy their children or how many pencils they can have? This guy is a walking hypocrite when it comes to conspicuous consumption.
And the Trump hypocrisy, along with the sputtering economy, keep coming back to bite Republicans. Voters keep ditching Donald Trump Republican candidates at every level. The midterm elections are now less than a year away, and even Donald Trump's fiercest supporters on Fox News are getting anxious and melting down.
If it is found that survivors were actually killed while clinging onto that boat, should Secretary Hegseth, Admiral Bradley, or others be punished?
I think you're going to find that this is war, that these people were killing our people by the millions, actually, if you look over a few years. I think last year we lost close to 300,000 people were killed. That's not mentioning all the families. Have you seen what happens with the families of not only the people killed, the people that are trying to get their son or their daughter off of this poison that they've been fed?
Regarding the people trying to get their son or daughter off of this poison, the fact is the Trump administration has cut funding for substance abuse prevention programs. Secondly, the president said last year we lost 300,000 people to fentanyl and other drug-related deaths. The CDC says the number last year was 48,000. That is still a tragedy, but it is 1/6 of Trump's fabricated number. Trump says millions have been killed the past few years. The CDC says that over the past 10 years, the total death toll is 800,000. Donald Trump also said this is war, except that Trump has not sought a congressional declaration for war. And the U.S. Constitution is clear. Only Congress has the authority to declare and approve a war.
Very soon we're going to start doing it on land, too, because we know every route, we know every house, we know where they manufacture this crap, we know where they put it all together. And I think you're going to see it very soon on land also. Yeah, please.
So to be clear, you support the decision to kill survivors after the initial
No, I
strike?
support the decision to knock out the boats. And whoever's piloting those boats, most of them are gone. But whoever are piloting those boats, they're guilty of trying to kill people in our country. Yeah, please.
Those boat pilots are guilty of trying to kill people in our country. If Donald Trump is the judge, the jury, and the executioner, America is a tyrannical fascist state, and dear leader can do or say whatever he wants. But in America, at least for the moment, we still have this thing called the Constitution, and it provides a strict set of rules and rights in our justice system. If somebody is suspected of trying to kill people, that person still gets to defend themselves in a court of law. Even people who are in boats far away from the United States are entitled to due process. Of course, all of that is lost on the MAGA fascists at the conservative cable news channels. Kudos, though, to liberal Jessica Tarla for trying to explain things to conservative knucklehead on Fox, Jesse Waters.
All right, so Jessica, it takes 2 strikes to knock the boat down to the bottom of the ocean. How is that a war crime?
Well, it's a war crime, and we didn't play any Republicans, but there were plenty of them that have been talking about, like John Yoo, who was the architect of the Bush 9/11 response, was talking about this as well, that if there are people who are shipwrecked, which is what these 2 survivors were.
Survivors?
They survived the first strike.
Jessica. They're not survivors.
Okay.
They're victims.
You know,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
that's how the DOD manual says that you have to do it, that you have to take them, you should send a helicopter to get them out of there, and then you try them. Or international law also says that as well. You could play Roger Wicker talking about it, Senator Tom Tillis, Mike Turner. These are all Republicans saying it. So the narrative that this is about the left getting all hot and bothered about another hoax is absolutely ludicrous.
Yes, the conservative narrative that this is all a left-wing hoax is crazy. And as Jessica noted, there are some Republicans who have pointed out that what the Trump administration did in this case violates Justice Department and U.S. military rules, tramples on U.S. law, and violates the laws of war. But of course, this is not technically a war because the Trump administration has not gotten congressional approval for a war. And that means these boat strikes are law enforcement actions. And when law enforcement shoots suspects first, and then again to make sure the suspects are dead, that is murder. Last week, the Trump administration gave 2 rationales for murdering survivors of the first strike on September 2nd. One was to stop them from calling for help from other alleged traffickers. The other Trump team rationale was to sink the boat to remove debris as a navigation hazard. Trump spokesperson Caroline Leavitt then made up a third rationale, claiming the additional strikes were U.S. self-defense, a boat 1,500 miles away from the U.S. homeland. Well, now, the Trump administration is offering yet another explanation. Officials say the 2 survivors of a missile that literally killed 9 other people on the boat were trying to complete the delivery. How could the U.S. military tell these 2 initial survivors were trying to complete the drug delivery? Were the men trying to restart the motors? Because just a few days ago, Pete Hegseth said the survivors were hidden in the literal smoke and fire and the fog of war. This latest Trump team justification about survivors determined to complete their drug delivery is prompting widespread ridicule in Congress and in the media that is not Fox News.
The explanation we're hearing a little bit is that maybe these 2 guys who survived were attempting to get back on the boat and somehow continue the mission. This flaming, smoking vessel that these guys were going to climb back on board and continue their drug run. That's one of the reports. Which
is totally insane.
Which is insane. Right. That's part of the spin we're hearing this morning, that those 2 people were still a threat. Therefore, the double tap
to be annihilated
was warranted. But again, that's just today's explanation.
That's today's
something
explanation.
different every day.
And then there's also they had a radio and they were radioing. Oh, so that Oh, does that mean now the new sort of rules of warfare is if you have a prisoner and they're indefensible and they have a radio, you can shoot them in the head?
Right.
That's now the new Hegseth policy.
But Hegseth himself may not be long for the Trump administration. There are now multiple reports that key Republicans in the U.S. Senate have had enough of Hegseth. And the Senate Republicans have joined with Democrats in an aggressive congressional investigation into Hegseth's allegedly abusive management, his firing of military leaders, his abandonment of U.S. military rules, and the shredding of the U.S. Constitution. While none of that may bother Donald Trump, Trump has long been known to get rid of underlings who generate too much negative attention. Trump wants all of the attention, for better or for worse, on himself. So maybe there is a chance that Hegseth loses his job. That, of course, would not be punishment enough, though. Pete Hegseth, as even Republicans have declared, is a murderer and should face criminal charges. Donald Trump, for his part, should also face justice someday. Perhaps we can ship Trump off to Venezuela and let the people there mete out a punishment. I know, if only.